Good afternoon. My name is Holly Anton. I'm an integrative psychologist here with the Institute for Health and Healing. We're an integrative medicine specialty clinic as a part of the Sutter health system. And as part of our intention and our goal at IHH, we want to support your full wellness, your full health and well-being, physically, emotionally, spiritually. And as a part of that, we've developed a series of wellness calls. And our intention is to have these be relevant and useful, but also pleasurable, healing, reassuring experiences that we've got your back. The topic today is decision-making and how difficult that can be, how we can make that less difficult for ourselves, more beneficial to both our own best interests and the best interests of those who we are around. And to start this 4 wellness call series on decision-making, I wanted to begin with, first, what is decision-making? What am I referring to? And what are some of the things that may make it difficult for any of us, and particularly difficult for some people? So, the ultimate source of information, Wikipedia, says, I am smiling when I say that, but the description of decision-making I thought was helpful. It breaks it down really into 3 key pieces. One is a thought process. Important to take that view of it for a few reasons I'll come back to. Secondly, it's a thought process that involves choice, choosing between options, with an implicit assumption that one choice is going to be more advantageous than the others. And thirdly, that we make those choices based on beliefs, assumptions that are sometimes wholly accurate, wholly based on fact and reality, sometimes only partly based in fact and reality, and sometimes hardly a shred of fact and reality involved. So in understanding for yourself what makes certain decisions much harder than others, we'll be looking through these different factors and helping you, one, see how to be more self-compassionate, what validates some of the reasons why this process can be as challenging as it is. It also can help in being more self-compassionate and understanding what some of these factors are, help you to make a more thorough study of what this decision actually is for you. What is your best interest? And finally, help you be less entangled in some of the illusions and distortions in thinking that can vastly complicate the process for you. So, of course, we're making decisions all the time. Actually, moment to moment, we're making decisions. Most of those we're not so aware of. The decision of when to cross our legs or uncross our legs, when to move from one task to another. Some decisions we make on a really daily basis and maybe give it thought, maybe not so much thought. What to eat, for instance, what to wear to work, which route to take home from work. And some decisions that we're facing are very important or have long-reaching consequences. So decisions on mates and jobs and whether or not to move, those kinds of things. Health decisions sometimes are huge. So in decisions large and small, there are ways that we can give attention to that choice that help, and there are other ways that we can give attention to a choice that actually interfere with our ability to think clearly about it. So in applying first the skill of calming, centering, mindful presence in the moment in which you are sitting right now, starting any decision-making process that's really important to you with more than a couple of moments of sitting, catching your breath, grounding in your body, being intentional, noticing that you are about to undertake some decision-making. It's surprising and not surprising to me as I work with people in my practice how often any of us can get swept up in the sense that a decision has to be made in such a way that we really give it very little time and attention, in a sense. We kind of throw ourselves into that process without first getting clear, one, about what it feels, kind of what state of mind do we want to make this decision from. Hopefully, that will start with a moment of settling, grounding, taking a few breaths. So right now I want to invite you to do that, because we're going to, work with some example from your experience, if you like, of a decision that you're facing. Just walk you through how you might go about thinking about this, how you might go about getting intentional about what making this decision means and doesn't mean, what your actual options may be, what the stakes really are, as best you can tell. So to begin this process, go ahead and find a posture, a position for your body in your chair or wherever it is that you happen to be listening right now. A stable, steady posture. A couple of deeper breaths just to bring your attention to the breathing process and also to release any tension on the out-breath, to let yourself settle, to invite yourself to become a little more still in your body. And to consider for a moment a decision today, or one that's coming up, that you might want to use as an example just as we walk through some of this information and process today. So take a moment. The more important the decision, the more useful this might feel, but you can use something more on a day-to-day kind of decision. What do you want to feed your body when you go home tonight after work, for instance, or one helpful piece of self-care that you would like to choose for yourself to do tonight before you go to bed. Or it can be a larger decision if you're facing one of those. Now, as you consider, this choice that you are intending to make, and you're getting much more conscious about it, notice what happens as you, I'll present you with one kind of challenge. So we'll say, okay, you've got 20 seconds to make that choice. I'll start counting. Let's see what you can do in 20 seconds. Five seconds left. So I'm adding time pressure, right? So the bigger the decision, the more time pressure can interfere with one's ability in a number of ways to make a decision that you feel confident of later. Lots of research to back that up. So time pressure sometimes is very real, or sometimes it's kind of arbitrary, for instance, like the time pressure I just put on you that actually didn't exist except for the fact that I said it did. But know that sometimes you may be putting time pressure on yourself without realizing it. You may be kind of built right into your tension or stress around this decision. It could be a kind of an illusory sense that it's something that you must do more quickly or sooner than actually you have to. So just put that out there. So check yourself for any illusion that there's more time pressure than there actually is. And that's one thing that can make decision making more difficult, is an illusion of time pressure. So so let's take that decision that you're trying to make. If you knew that I have 4 important pieces of information that you don't have that would influence that decision you were going to make. If you knew I had that information and you didn't, you would probably feel less confident of your choice. So when we know that there's information out there that we don't have that's relevant to the decision, we doubt the decision that we make. We doubt our choice more. Again, research that backs that up. So if you know there's more information that's relevant, of course, you would seek it out if you could. The problem is a lot of times we kind of know in the back of our mind that there may be more information relevant, but we don't necessarily give ourselves the time to go ahead and do what we can to look that up, to seek out more viewpoints, more perspectives, more facts or evidence. So another way to check, are you making a decision harder than it is because you aren't giving yourself the benefit of a little more time or space to gather some more information? That will help you feel more confident about your choice. So, for instance, people here in Sonoma County many people are speaking at the moment of, should I move? A huge decision. Should I move? Should I move out of the area? I'm tired of the fire season. I'm tired of feeling fearful of the evacuations and the alerts. and the sense of time pressure that can be built into that as people feel anxious. The weather warms up or there's a high wind. So it's an example of an illusory sense of imminent pressure to make a huge decision quickly. Well, for one thing, that sense of time pressure could be vastly magnified and kind of propel a person into decision making before they're really ready. And two, it might make them hesitant to gather, all the relevant information that helps them make that decision. A whole other category, in addition to this kind of sense of inadequate time or inadequate information, a whole other category of challenge is the sense of it being a high stakes decision. So consider that in the choice that you're working with right now. One of the things that anxiety or stress or tension can do to our thinking process is oversimplify a complex matter into a kind of oversimplified and therefore easier to make a quick decision on kind of matter. So take a huge complex decision like, should I move away in the next 6 weeks? Now, if my anxiety is high or my sense of, or I'm getting kind of swept up in this feeling that because I feel concerned that danger is imminent, it's easy for me to assume that danger actually is imminent. If I feel I'm in danger, that must mean I'm in danger. Well, not necessarily, right? I mean, maybe not. There may be plenty of reason why a person might feel that way, but we have to come back to the way I feel doesn't make this a current reality. So in cognitive behavioral therapy, that's a kind of a thinking distortion that's sometimes referred to as emotional reasoning, or believing feelings are facts. Feelings are real, but don't necessarily represent fact. Does it make sense that a person could feel fear in the presence of some of the cues of fire season? Of course. Does that mean we're in imminent danger? Of course not. No. We don't get the benefit of knowing any of that for certain. So that sense of time pressure, a sense of super high stakes, in this case a sense of survival, about as high stakes as it could be, can really distort our thinking process. And one of the distortions that we make is this oversimplification of a complex thing. So we can believe our feelings represent the fact, and it can propel us to try to make a decision prematurely or without enough information. We can also oversimplify a complex matter into, let's say, two choices. So I've got the right decision and I've got the wrong decision. Anxiety mind just says, let's just simplify it into those two categories. This is either a good decision or a bad decision, the right one or the wrong one. That kind of thinking distortion, also sometimes called all or nothing thinking or black and white thinking, makes any choice feel higher stakes than it is. Let's consider that for a minute. Even a much smaller decision like what should I order off the menu? There's the healthy thing and everything else would be unhealthy. There's a thing I should, there's a thing I'm expected to order, blah, 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 blah. So as our tension level goes up or our anxiety level goes up, the chances are that we start to oversimplify a a more complex matter. And at its worst, that kind of distortion will simplify something into just two categories, and usually that boils down to right and wrong, good and bad, the correct one and the incorrect one. So look out for that particular pitfall, especially if you feel like you're under time pressure or you feel like this is a high-stakes decision. All the more reason to take a breath, slow yourself down, come back into the present moment, come back into your body, come back into looking at this decision from as many different angles as you can. Look for the gray areas. Look for the not quite so straightforward as black and white, right and wrong. There almost always will be other options that you hadn't considered. For instance, move or not move. Well, there actually are other options. You won't necessarily see them and slow yourself down, take a breath, or 10. Get out a sheet of paper, pencil, laptop, whatever you prefer. Get intentional about this decision. Identify the information that you have, the information that you still may want to gather. Try to get a realistic sense of how much time do you have to make this decision. Double check the way that your mind is framing this decision. Is it turning something into a much higher stakes choice than it may actually be? If so, taking breaths and slowing yourself down will help. Why? Because that lowers your arousal level in your body. That actually helps your brain work better. It reduces the effect of these thinking distortions. Just that one thing. Just slowing down in your body, just dropping back into the moment. Some perspective taking of, I have the time to breathe. I have the time to gather more information if I need it. Almost always. I have the benefit of letting my body and mind calm down to see if maybe there are options I haven't considered yet. Are there some possibilities between black and white? For instance, like the entire color wheel? Identifying additional options, even those you do not plan to take, is another way of being able to get out of the black and white thinking that will make decision-making so much harder for you, that will make a decision feel much higher stakes than it may be. So identifying as many different options, different choices, even those you do not plan to take, can help. So there are two skills. One, use your breathing, use your grounding skills to lower your overall tension and arousal level. Come on back down into this moment. Two, this perspective taking, coming back into the moment, hopefully will let you see whether or not your mind is oversimplified or, in that way, created a right and a wrong, a black and white choice scenario that doesn't really exist. Find multiple options. Notice that, of course, the feelings that you have around a choice are important. They are relevant. The things that you want, the different feelings you have, the conflicting feelings you have, certainly are important. It's just that those feelings don't determine, don't make it so. That you are afraid doesn't mean you're in danger. That you have self-doubt doesn't mean you're going to make a bad choice. But that distortion of believing feelings are facts affects most of us. That falling into black and white thinking can affect any of us. Magnifying the extent of how high of a stakes decision is this can make us all more anxious, and the more anxious we get, of course, the more vulnerable we are to these distortions. So I'm hoping that this information is helpful. I'm hoping that you can take away from it a couple of ideas, and if you make this decision that you've been thinking about, that you've been playing with here today, if you make this decision before we meet again in 2 weeks, we're going to continue in a slightly different vein here on the decision-making process. But if you've made that decision, then notice how you feel about it. If it was a small decision, you may need to notice how you feel about it pretty quickly after you make it. It's like, okay, what did you decide to have for dinner tonight? What did you decide to do to take care of yourself tonight before you went to bed? If it was a big decision, you may be able to wait and kind of think back 2 weeks from now and say, I still feel good about that decision. But do notice after the fact, because that information is going to also be something that helps you, and we'll come back to that when we meet on this topic again. So again, to recap, we're making decisions all the time. The kind of attention that you bring to it, the quality of your attention, the degree of settledness that you can bring, that is in the moment that you want to think and be intentional about decision making, the degree to which you can let yourself settle down and be clear that that's what you're doing. You're about to engage in decision making rather than sliding into it sideways. So that quality and the type of attention that you give it matters. The way that your mind is framing it has a big impact on how tense or how high stakes that decision will feel. The intensity of your feelings can affect how many options you feel like you have. So those are some distortions in one's thinking that can make decision-making more difficult. And in general, you are going to be less vulnerable to these distortions in thinking if, one, you reduce the sense of time pressure, two, lower your immediate body arousal level using breathing, using grounding techniques, and three, identify more options than you currently have.